Hi, welcome back. This is Andrew Sears, and in this lecture, I'm going to talk with you about setting up and using AI tools in CityVision's doctoral program. Now, one thing just to realize with this lecture is these tools are changing all the time. So we're going to try to keep a lot of the documentation up to date. But if there's things that I'm referencing here that are slightly different, it could be a year or two from now, then just follow the latest information online. So here's one of the key principles. So City Vision, our three values are Jesus, justice, technology. Many of you know my background. I grew up poor. I went to grad school at MIT. I co-founded a research group there. And we're trying to make cutting edge use of technology. And I believe that AI is likely to change research as much as the internet did. If you ever did research before the internet, it was you had to go in a library, look up stuff in card catalogs. It was just brutal. And the internet made things, infinitely more efficient. And AI is essentially doing the same thing. Now, what we're going to be using the use of AI and other technology by students. So we're going to require that you have a subscription to Google Gemini Pro throughout the doctoral program. We're going to integrate Google Gemini and Notebook LM into nearly all courses. And you're going to need to have a publicly facing research journal using Substack for articles and podcasts. And we're going to provide, at the end of each course, you're going to get access to a Notebook LM of the entire course content after you complete the course, and then you can use that. I'll explain a little bit more of our pedagogy on that, but the idea is we don't want to give that to you at the beginning because we want you to engage with the material, not just have the AI do it all for you. But we're going to provide that at the end, and then you can use that as a tool. Um, so the use of AI by City Vision. So we use AI throughout the doctoral program in preparing the materials. And what that does is it enables us to provide highly customized integrated content in most of our courses that are essentially the equivalent of writing an integrated book for the course. So let me just use an example. Research methods. We're doing research methods very kind of unique for our context. We're really strongly emphasizing the practical aspect and action research. We're also integrating a lot of Christian worldview into that. There's no books out there that can cover that, but I can get Gemini articles that will integrate all of those components. We also, it, for teaching faculty, they have access to the entire course content in the Notebook LM. So one of the first things you're going to need to do is sign up for Google Gemini Pro. There's trade-offs between using personal and work accounts. I'll just talk those through. At least right now, one of the big benefits of personal, there's two main benefits of the personal account. Number one is often Google may have student discounts, and right now they're only offering those to personal accounts. So you can look for Google for Gemini student offers, and sometimes they'll have student offers, and you can use your enrollment um, I guess not enrollment agreement, but your enrollment verification. It's in the Populi student tab. And again, you can only get the student offers with personal accounts. The other advantage of the personal account is you can make public notebook LMs and public content for that, and I'll explain that a little bit more later. The advantage of work is if your employer uses Google for work, and you have Google Workspace, there just may be a lot of efficiencies of being able to integrate your own Google Docs from work and other things. So you'd have to decide that, but there's trade-offs, and you also may be able to get your employer to pay for it. So we have the steps to do this in the discussion assignment in the course. Some of the setup tasks. So you're going to need to set up Google Drive for research, and you want to have a public research folder and then a private research folder. So the public research folder, often whenever you're publishing an article or a podcast, or even if you're writing a paper, it can be helpful to just to provide that as additional resources for people. Now, Google Deep Research. There's a lot of prompt suggestions, and I'm gonna pull some of these up real quick. And this is linked in your course. But you'll see sections here for citing AI research, citation guidelines, instructions for importing Gemini Deep Research citations into Zotero, and then suggested prompts for doing academic research, because by default, a lot of the Google AI is not going to be using academic sources. So you have to do specific things to get to do that. And then we have some other things here that can be particularly helpful for creating a community of practice and to do peer research. Let me just give a quick overview. The idea is often we suggest that you start with a broad organizational scoping search, then you use that to narrow to best practice research organizations. And we have, if you're affiliated with a rescue mission, we already have a directory of rescue missions that you can use. And often what you would do is you would just cut and paste these into the AI, and whenever you do a search, and you can see some of the example queries, and then you can see the prompts that we have for this. Now, if you don't have, if you're not a rescue mission and say you're with some other, movement or something like that, you can create your own list of peer organizations. And generally, you're looking for larger organizations that are going to have a lot of information online, because, if your peers are really small or don't have information online, they're not going to be good sources to use in AI. So that's a little bit more in using Google Deep Research, and there's going to be articles that will explain this in more detail. I'm just trying to give you an overview right now. Now, it's worth explaining the how-to portions of this course. A lot of this course is how-to, so it's instructions. How do you do Google Deep Research? How do you set up Google Drive? How do you do Notebook LM? And what we're going to do is we're going to provide a starting list of how-to videos and instructions. But you guys are doctoral students. You guys know how to do research. That's what we're training you to do. And if you don't know how to do research to figure out how to do this, that's part of the point of the course and the whole program. So, we're going to give you a list of these videos and instructions. You decide how many of the videos you want to watch. Usually this is, and this is especially whenever we give you a full list. Now, in many of the courses, if we have a specific single video, it's highly recommended. You're probably not going to know what you're doing in the significant portions of the course if you skip those videos. But for these how-to videos, we're just giving you a long list of videos, so you can decide what you want to use. And then if you can't figure it out, you need to be using Gemini to help you. You can say, how do I do this? So ultimately, we believe that you should be able to solve most of these how-to problems if, whatever, technology thing that you're trying to set up. Now, here's one of the main points and analogies that I would want to use for your doctoral program. So I looked up, what's the highest freestanding mountain in the world that you can actually bike up, and it's Mount Kilimanjaro. So you can see, this person's at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, this person's at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And the idea is, your doctoral project is like biking up Mount Kilimanjaro. So the idea right now is that each doctoral course you are training to gain research and thinking fitness level to be able to bike up Mount Kilimanjaro. So here's the main point that I'm trying to make is we're encouraging you to use appropriate use of AI in courses and research, because that's going to speed your path in solving society's great problems, whatever your challenges your organization has. But AI is like an e-bike. So if you use the e-bike the whole time for your training and misuse AI in courses, you're not going to have the fitness that you need to complete your doctoral project. And I don't want to see students get to that point and they're just not passed for their doctoral project because they didn't get to the kind of intellectual fitness level that they need. So the main point of that is just don't misuse AI, and we'll give you some guidelines on that. So here's one of the principles. I'm really big into using AI, but using it appropriately. And research and writing without AI, it's like, you're going up this super steep hill. It's really, really challenging. Researching with AI, you just press the pedal and there's a battery that, it goes for you. It's like the easy button. So here's the key thing. In the technology world, if you want a system to be secure, they call it you air gap the system. So you keep a computer from being plugged into the internet and there is no connection. For the most part, I want there to be almost a complete air gap between any sort of, say, Google Deep Research reports you do or other things and your actual writing. So the AI shouldn't be writing for you. That's like you're not learning the biking muscles. The act of writing is how we learn, through that. So if you want to, use Google Deep Research, you can reference it as a citation. Now you should realize that all Google Deep Research is secondary sources. It's, in my opinion, it's better than what's on Wikipedia. But having said that, it's still a secondary source. Often it will reference primary sources. So here's the key principles. The best practice to do one or the other. Either whenever I will write things, often I will write almost all the article myself, and then I will reference a Google Deep Research report with that. Or I might publish a whole, and you'll see how we use this throughout the doctoral program. I'll publish a whole Google Deep Research report, and I may do a couple modifications because sometimes there's something it puts in there that's inconsistent with their values or not true, or things along those lines. So I think that's the key part. So as I said before, don't use AI to generate writing that you turn in as assignments or projects, and cite AI written reports. So AI research guidelines. Because technology is one of CityVision's core values, more than almost any other program, we're going to encourage the proper use of AI in research. But we're also going to be very strict for misuse of AI. So I don't want you to be paranoid, but just follow the basic guidelines. Don't use any text created or manipulated by AI without directly citing it. And that also means don't go to a paper and say to the AI, clean this up for me, because it's going to do most of your writing, and that's kind of defeating the educational purpose. So, cutting and pasting from AI output, and we have AI checkers built into our system. So, especially the doctoral level, we shouldn't be, finding students that are using AI inappropriately. So, as I mentioned before, you should use AI to help with how-to problems with technology. If you have courses that have assignments where you're setting up technology, and you can even just cut and paste the assignment and say, I'm trying to complete the following instructions, but I need additional detail. Can you provide more instructions? Now, don't do that with another assignment, because if you do that, then the AI is doing all your educational heavy lifting, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So that's one of the other principles. Now, one of the key things as a researcher in the age of AI, your effectiveness as a researcher is going to depend a lot on your ability to write effective AI prompts. There's people out there that are saying, prompt engineers are going to be, important jobs. I'm not so sure about that, but all of us in our job are going to need to know how to write. And, I like the term engineering, because writing a complicated prompt is almost like writing, it's almost like engineering. So here's the basic format of prompts. Usually you start with a persona. You say, who are you? And that gives it a domain of knowledge that it's going to be limited to. Then you give it a task, then context, and then format and constraints. And what this looks like is you are X. So you could say you are a leader of a gospel rescue mission. Research, the history of gospel rescue missions. Your audience is, executive directors of gospel rescue missions, right? In casual style, and or you could say, in this case, it's APA style, or and sometimes you might only want peer-reviewed sources or other sources, so you have to decide. Now, here's one of the most important things. So, I'm a quick learner. I've been using AI pretty extensively since it came out, and a lot of the prompts that I'm using in the articles, I think could be very good examples for you guys to learn from. So it's very easy to do a simple prompt. So a lot of people think, well, I know how to do a Google search. It's not like that. It is much more challenging to be able to write a good prompt. And so I would encourage you, whenever you read any article that you have at CityVision, look at the prompt and then think about the techniques that I'm using in those prompts, because a lot of those techniques, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to model for you how you could do your own research, so you could adapt those things. So a key to writing effective prompts is understanding how various knowledge domains are structured and relate to each other. So the more terminology, as you're going through courses, you're going to pick up terminology. The more terminology you understand, the more effective prompts you can write. But it's especially how these things relate. So an example that I've used that's been really helpful in a lot of our courses, this is especially true in interdisciplinary areas. The term theological vision corresponds to the sociological term reframing. Now, if you really understand what theological vision is, and if you understand reframing and movement, then you understand why those two are connected. So as you understand these concepts, a lot of times it can be helpful to bridge the two, and the AI can be useful for that, because what it'll do is it will make a much more rich output, and you can see examples of that. So an example is this Gospel Rescue Mission reframing report, and you can see kind of a very long prompt that I put here. You are a leader of a gospel rescue mission with expertise in theology and sociology. So that's the persona. And then, this is the action. Write a consulting report for the gospel rescue mission movement. And I want to give some context. So the movement has struggled with achieving critical mass. So part of the reason is I'm wanting it to tie in with the concept of critical mass of social movements. So I'm familiar with kind of a lot of the concepts as a social movement in response to more recent contextual changes. You are tasked with researching new ways of framing the approach to addressing homelessness, and these are terms that are used in framing: diagnostic, prognostic, motivational, as a new theological vision, Christian framing. So I'm trying to use both domains. So these are sociological terms in framing, and this is Christian terms. And what that does is by combining those two, it's much more rich. And you'll see if you go through this article how that is true. And then the concept of ministry expression, which Tim Keller coined that term, is the same as the sociological concept of repertoires. And then I ask it to research various examples of framing and theological vision in the following list of organizations. Then I ask it to provide 5 different potential reframing positions, theological positions, amalgamated from the examples that might help the movement achieve critical mass while remaining faithful to the historical values of gospel rescue missions. And then I provided a list of 100 organizations. Hopefully with that type of prompt, you understand this is not typing in a question to a search engine. It's a lot more complicated, and you're thinking through, like, this is a research project, right? So the way you should be viewing AI is it's your 24/7 research assistant. And use it as a research assistant, and you have to provide framework for the research project. So this is a research project, and it's just super quick. It's able to go through all these organizations and produce output. Now, here's the key thing that I want you to understand, and I love this story. So there's an engineer who worked for Henry Ford. He came in and he charged him $10,000. This is way back, 100 years ago, for fixing Henry Ford's massive generator. And Henry Ford, it only took the guy 5 minutes, and he said, well, it's $1 for hitting the machine and $999 for knowing where to hit it. So writing the right AI prompt is like knowing where to hit it. And ultimately, you can get the type of article you're looking for by writing the right AI prompt. So a lot of times how I will do this, so if I, might want to create a lecture, and let's say it would take me 5 hours to create a lecture, all the slides and then record it. But I want the course to be better than it would otherwise. So I don't have time, I'm already in this course, in a lot of courses, designing, anywhere from 8 to 20, lectures or recordings. But I might have another 10 to 20 that I'd like to add, but I just don't have time to do that. So what I'll do is I'll use a prompt that basically would articulate what I would want to achieve in that lecture, and I provide all the hooks, for that, and that's kind of what I did in that previous prompt. And then I am essentially outsourcing that, and the AI produces something that's probably 80% as good as what I would have done in the lecture. Often, if I have diagrams that help fill it out, I'll fill in some of the diagrams. So ultimately, that's what we're trying to get you to do, is to be able to use AI like the wise engineer.